Hi everybody, Andrew Cuneo here, new day, new standard video. Today I'm going to go over a deck that I've been working on that really doesn't use that many of the Phyrexia cards, but it does have two pretty important inclusions that I think really kind of breathe new life into this deck. So this is going to be a green-white humans deck, and the two new inclusions are, first of all, Razorverge Thicket. Now the inclusion of the allied fast lands in standard means that you have access to the fast lands and the pain lands, and you also have the slow lands, and a lot of decks can play an additional thing that's going to be functionally a dual land for them, or close to a dual land, like I've got Plaza of Heroes here. So that means that two-color aggro decks are really an incredible shape right now. I'm doing it here with green-white humans, but you can, like the blue-white soldiers deck already existed, and it got even better with the addition of Seachrome Coast. And I think you can also do it if you look at like red-green decks playing Copperline Gorge or red-black decks playing Blackleaf Cliffs. But here I'm doing it with green-white humans. The other important addition from Phyrexia is Melira. So this is a 3/3 human for 2 mana, which, I mean, a 3/3 2-drop, you don't really need to get that much beyond that to have a really good card. And this thing does two things for you. The first doesn't really help you very much. If you would get one or more poison counters, instead you get one poison counter. There are some decks that are trying to poison you. I don't really think that that's a super popular strategy, so I don't think that matters all that much. But what matters a lot is the second clause, exile the Melira, and you choose another creature or artifact. I don't have any artifacts in my deck. When it's put into the graveyard this turn, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So this is a callback to a previous card called Safi Eric's Daughter, which went to the graveyard when you activated the ability, which allowed for some infinite loops. Because this card exiles, I don't think you can create any infinite loops with it, or certainly not easily. There might be some way you could do it if you had some card that was making like a token copy of it every time something happened. This deck not capable of any infinite loops, so we don't need to worry about that. But what it does do is it means that you can just, safely jam your cards into play, and your opponent's removal spell, they're going to have to point it at this, unless it's a removal spell, the exiles, which means that some of your better, more expensive cards are just going to stay in play. So that is a really big deal. Also, we now have kind of a critical mass of legends, so the Plaza of Heroes becomes pretty appealing. So just looking at the curve, I've only got 7 1-drops. It'd be nice to have more 1-drops, but I don't really love playing 4 Hopeful Initiates, and there aren't really any other good options. There's some other cards like Allenbach Escort, which is like maybe playable, but I really think that this deck has a wealth of options at 2 and 3 mana, and so I'm skimping on 1-drops a little bit. 3 Thalias. Thalia is obviously an excellent card in a deck that's, almost entirely creatures, and the fact that it has the human synergies is really nice. I've got 4 Katildas in my deck. Katilda, I think, is really the big payoff for doing this green-white humans thing, as opposed to trying to, just play mono-white or like a green-white legends deck or something. The ability to make all of your stuff tap for mana, really big deal. The 6 mana tap ability to put +1/+1 counters on your creatures, pretty big deal if the game drags into a stalemate. And you might be wondering, well, how are you going to spend all that mana? One of the ways to spend all the mana is Recruitment Officer. Gives you, an excellent late-game sink for having a lot of mana. There's also just the 6 mana tap ability on it. It's an excellent way to spend the mana. It also just leads to games where you can just dump out your hand much faster than your opponent can, so you get really far ahead on board. In the 3-drop slot, there's a ton of great options. So I think Adeline is pretty obviously excellent. And it's also a really good target to bring back with Melira, because a lot of the times the game is just going to revolve around whether or not they can keep your Adeline off the board, and Melira gives you a way to keep it in play. Also, all the Plaza of Heroes gives you an excellent way to keep it in play. Wedding Announcements, it's not the hardest hitting 3-drop. When we get to my sideboard, we're going to see that there are some other 3-drops that would hit harder. But it gives the deck a little bit more resiliency. It gives you some card drawing, just a slightly better game plan in longer games. And obviously Wedding Announcement's proven to be one of the best cards in Standard, so it's not really any loss to be including it. For Brutal Cathars, the fact that this is a human, so it synergizes with the Katilda and Sigarda, which we'll get to in a second, is pretty nice. Also, Brutal Cathar is another one of the creatures that I think has improved a lot by being able to protect it in a way with Melira. So if you've got something like a Shieldred that you really just need to stay exiled under the Brutal Cathar, you can, use the Melira. The Shieldred's going to come back into play, and then the Melira trigger will resolve, and you can Brutal Cathar it again. Pretty big deal. Sigarda is another one of the really big payoffs for doing this humans thing. Like a 4/4 flying trampler that buffs all of your other creatures, and it has this Coven ability that allows you to find additional humans, which it definitely comes up in this deck. It's a really, really strong card. And it's another one of these things where we've got almost all of our creatures are legends, so Plaza of Heroes is, very enabled. 2 Wandering Emperors, I think it's just a very good card in a creature deck. And it's another, with Katilda, you do want to have your curve go a little bit higher. So, a 4 mana card is certainly a welcome addition. I've been talking about these Plaza of Heroes a fair amount. So when I started with this deck, I was playing some amount of forests just to be able to cast my Katilda and Meliras on turn 2. And I eventually realized that, there's no reason for the forest not to just be Plaza of Heroes. Originally, I was trying some number of actual green sideboard cards, and I kind of decided I didn't really like any of the green sideboard cards anyway, so I just switched all the forests to Plaza of Heroes. It makes the Boseiju like a little bit more awkward to channel, but other than that, there's really no downside to it at all. You might be thinking, well, okay, you need green mana to activate Katilda, but if you have a Katilda in play, your Plaza of Heroes is going to tap for green mana, so that's really not a problem. It's really just the channeling ability on Boseiju. That's the only thing you're losing out on, potentially, by just playing all Plaza of Heroes over forests. Other interesting thing about the land base is I do have 2 Eiganjos in my deck. It winds up just being a really powerful effect because it gets down to 1 or 2 mana basically every game. So I wanted to play 2 of them. With 2 of them, every once in a while, you're going to draw 2, and it's like you're going to wish that one of them was a plains. But that happens pretty rarely. I wouldn't go up to 3 or 4 because you do want to make your first 4 land drops with this deck. So drawing 2 of them then, drawing 2 of them a lot of the time and potentially 3 of them would be a pretty big drawback. Moving on to the sideboard, like I said, there is a bunch of other 3-drops that you could have played instead. I've got 4 Anointed Peacekeepers right now, which that gives you a really easy swap for Brutal Cathars if Brutal Cathar is not going to be good in the matchup. I don't know that you really need 4 Anointed Peacekeepers. I wouldn't say I've found any matchups where it's like you really want to have Anointed Peacekeeper. So if you want to try something else, that would be an easy card to trim. I think you're probably always going to want at least 2 or 3 of them. Got 2 Extraction Specialists right now, which obviously is just a card that synergizes really well with Melira, and just synergizes really well with having all of these cheap creatures. Potentially, you might want to play more copies of Extraction Specialist. It's a good card. The only thing that really holds it back is like the body does not hit that hard. But it's obviously a good card. I've got 2 Unlicensed Hearses. That I have encountered a fair amount of people who are trying to do reanimating things on the ladder, and Unlicensed Hearse is just a really good card against them. And unlike a lot of other decks, this deck actually does not have any main deck kind of incidental graveyard hate. I don't have the Armored Scrap Gorger. I don't have Graveyard Trespasser. So I think having some amount of graveyard hate is pretty good. I've got 2 Lorans. It's a legendary human, which fits with the main synergies of the deck, and it's also just a generally good card. This is another one that, I depending on what decks you're trying to beat, you might actually just want a 3rd copy. Got 3 Circle of Confinements in my sideboard to have some more removal spells. I haven't gotten to play the matchup against Blue-White Soldiers yet. I'm kind of concerned about not having good removal in that matchup. Obviously, Brutal Cathar is really good against that deck because they don't have a ton of ways to interact with it. But I think you need more removal than that. That's why I'm playing Circle of Confinement. For a while, I was looking for, are there any other cards I could be playing, like are there any 1-mana cards that would really help me in the matchup? And the answer is there aren't. The one card I found that was somewhat appealing was Tailswipe. But I eventually just got rid of those from the sideboard when I decided I really wanted to play 4 Plaza of Heroes in my main deck, so I just didn't want to have to play like 14 or 15 actual green-producing lands to consistently be able to cast Tailswipe on like turn 2 or 3. If I get to play, if it turns out that the Azorius Soldiers deck is still a really popular deck and I really need a card against it and the card is Tailswipe, you might have to cut some Plaza of Heroes and add some forests back into the deck. What other cards are there? So there's one AO just to have an additional, like, more expensive card. I don't know that you really need it. I like being able to, in sideboarding, if I think my opponent's just going to have a massive amount of removal, just board in, more expensive cards that are better against removal. And one Fateful Absence. This deck does have a bit of a problem that if Sheoldred's just sitting in play, it's pretty annoying. You can eventually win through Sheoldred, but it is definitely not easy, and you're most of the time going to be losing if Sheoldred's in play. So I wanted at least one more removal spell. If I had access to like a 16th sideboard card right now, I think it would be another card that could kill Sheoldred, either another Destroy Evil, another Fateful Absence, or maybe a Valorous Stance. Any of the usual suspects out of white. Maybe even like a touch of the Spirit Realm. I'm not really sure which one would be the best. And I'm not sure that I really need the additional anti-Sheoldred card right now. It's something though that I'm thinking about as I'm playing the matchups is, do I actually need all of this stuff in my sideboard? Would I prefer to just have more answers to Sheoldred? So that's the deck. Let's run it through some games. I'm up against the King Snake, and I have won the die roll, which is very nice with this deck. Oh, wow. It's one of the hands with Plaza of Heroes. It's a little awkward, but honestly, it would be a forest if it wasn't a Plaza of Heroes, so it still just would have been awkward. That would have been a really good card to draw last turn, or to have in my opening hand. I guess I'm going to lead off one Thalia. And then depending on what they do, potentially I'm going to have a Eiganjo Adeline, which is going to be quite good. Oh, this is a pretty good card. Doesn't really do much to play Adeline. I think I'm just going to go with Katilda, Recruitment Officer. Leaves me more options for next turn. Okay. Well, maybe I should have blocked here. I think the fact that they're willing to make that attack makes it seem pretty likely that they have another Ran Executioner Thane in their hand. This thing's a vampire? Ooh, interesting. So what do I want to do? I could go Katilda Melira. I think that's what I want to do. Then I'll attack here, and assuming they don't block, I'm going to Brutal Cathar, the Welcoming Vampire. Well, assuming they don't double block the Adeline. Good luck if you don't have sweepers in your deck, opponent, and I'm going to guess you don't have sweepers in your white-black vampire deck. I wonder if they were playing 3 colors and they just never drew. There are other, like the red. Because if they're really a tribal vampire deck, they have red in their deck. But maybe they're not a tribal vampire deck. Maybe I just got too obsessed by the fact realizing that 2-drop was a vampire. I am going to board in Circle of Confinement, not because of this weird vampire clause, but just because I saw a bunch of good 2 and 3 mana creatures. I think I'm also going to board in Fateful Absence, just as a bit of a hedge in case they have Shieldred in their deck. And maybe trim on some of those. I'm also going to trim on a Brutal Cathar. Against the black decks, like the Brutal Cathars, it's pretty hard to get them to stay in play. You don't really want to draw a ton of them. One card that I did consider for my sideboard and wound up not... I'm going to mulligan this hand. This is too many lands. One card I considered and wound up not including because I cut all the green cards was Tivar's Stand, which I think is a good card and potentially a pretty good card in the sideboard of this deck, but just I wanted to play Plaza of Heroes, and like Plaza of Hero almost does the same thing. I really do not think that Skrull's Hive is a very good card for my opponent in this matchup. Oh, this is a pretty good card, though. So they're not a vampire deck. They're just like a white-black creature deck. Interesting. My Thalia is pretty awkward with this hand. Got more copies of that guy. Do I care? But do I want to trigger this thing? I don't think I do. So if you haven't already, please take a second to sub to the channel. I would say that the worst thing you will discover about subbing to the channel is the sense of shame you'll feel for not having subbed sooner. So it's definitely worth it. I hope they don't have a card that gives all my things -1/-1. Yeah, that's also kind of bad. This was probably a pretty greedy block. I've got all these life-linking mites to contend with. So many copies of this thing. I guess I'm also pretty close to dead. Probably shouldn't have attacked. I like the way I sideboarded, I think. I think I made a really bad attack last turn. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was about to just die from toxic. Yeah. Maybe I didn't sideboard well. Maybe I want to have Lorans in my deck and Hopeful Initiates. And Destroy Evil. They had Wedding Announcement and Scrolls Hive, and they had Adeline. Maybe the Recruitment Officer's the worst of the one drops. Not mulliganing, but definitely need to draw a third land. 2-drop would be nice too. 2-drop into third land. Well, our plan's starting to come together. One thing that's really nice about Melira is it's a 2-drop that doesn't die to cut down, which is a pretty big deal, I think. Land. All right, I'm going to get a card off this wedding announcement. Hopefully they play like a wedding announcement of their own and I get to Loran it. Please don't play Adeline. Yeah. Not ideal. So just play a Loran of my own. Here, does it do anything in play? I am actually going to play it just because it gets me closer to the point where I'm going to block this Adeline with a lot of stuff. I don't think I'm going to just double block it if they attack here because there's a lot of ways that can go wrong. I think I'll just have the Hopeful Initiate eat the token. Now I am going to double block it because I'm guaranteed it's going to work. So they missed a land drop. It's good for me. Well, now they made that land drop, but their hand is, I guess yeah, their hand is 6 spells right now. Rite of Oblivion. Didn't enjoy that one. I guess this is kind of the impetus why their deck is built this way, huh? Should we both draw a card, maybe? I think so. I'll get the Scrolls Hive, but I'll keep the one that doesn't have Summoning Sickness, because probably at the end of their turn we're both going to draw a card again. Given that I don't have anything to do with the mana on my turn next turn. You have another Sheoldred's Edict? I won't be happy if you do. I do. Okay. Still don't have a land. It's an impressive amount of not having a land by the opponent. Need to be worried about the Wandering Emperor if they pass with all their mana up. Restoration of Eiganjo. We're trying to fix Eiganjo and it's still awful. It's always been awful. I don't know if they didn't see that I was going to do that or they wanted me to do it. I don't feel like they were forced to block that way. I think they chose to block that way, which I'm not sure why they did. Like they might have wanted to get my mana tap so I couldn't use Plaza of Heroes. I guess that did something. I think I'm only going to send one token at the Wandering Emperor. I don't think they have that many removal spells that can kill the token. Oh, bad. I could have just taken Adeline. I think at this point I'm going to actually take a second Recruitment Officer. I'm pretty all in on using Recruitment Officers. That thing's going to be a problem for me. Rite of Oblivion can get rid of my wedding festivity, right? Yeah. I'm going to let them kill the Thalia if they want to, because I have another one in my hand. It's possible that what they're going to do is kill the Thalia and then use Rite of Oblivion on the wedding festivity, which that wouldn't be great for me, but it wouldn't be that bad. I'm thinking to do it to the Recruitment Officer. Interesting. Probably didn't need to play both of these. Pre-combat and just give away all of the contents of my hand, but I wanted to do it that way, so I did. More Elias Ilkors. You got it. I have cut down. No. So close. No, I think I'm pretty screwed. Maybe I can draw a Wandering Emperor to get out of this. This doesn't seem like a very good attack by them. I don't really know what the logic was here. I think they maybe didn't see that I could do this. Or I guess they wanted the card off of Wedding Announcement. It doesn't seem that good either. They weren't dead on board. Weird. The last few turns of that game were very weird. It's a fine hand. Probably play Thalia on turn 2. Let's see what they do. This is a pretty clear Thalia spot just because if they don't have cut down, they might not be able to cast anything. Oh, they're a Mardu Soldiers deck. Maybe they're not playing soldiers. Maybe they're just like some sort of tokens deck. Another opponent that has Rite of Oblivion in their deck. Would not have expected that to be that popular. Rite of Oblivion exiling does get around Melira. That's kind of annoying. Mondrak. I don't know what this guy does. Sacrifice 2 other artifacts under creatures. It doubles up your token generation. I see. I don't think I want to let that sit in play. I think that my opponent's deck is probably built around it being in play. I guess they have the new Elesh Norn in their deck, probably. Doesn't that have something to do with tokens as well? I could not use Melira to save my guy from Rite of Oblivion because it exiles. How many cards is their deck? It's a normal number of cards. The sleeves just make it look bigger. Sanctuary Warden is a very good card. Alright, we got some chump blocking going on. So maybe I'm making progress here. I feel like I've come out too slow, but maybe not. There's no more Sanctuary Wardens. Nixilis. That doesn't really do very much. I guess it does something in the sense that I am going to have to spend time attacking it. Don't want to get Mondrak off the board. Seems pretty good. I don't think I want to let my Melira just die. Oh, I screwed up. I shouldn't have killed the second devil. Maybe I could have kept my Hopeful Initiate. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't realize it didn't triple block. It was a pretty bad block by the opponent. I'm just keeping the Sigarda in my hand rather than discarding it because I don't really care about my life total. I guess I'm allowing them to gain 2 life, but I also don't think that's that big of a deal. More Obnixiluses. All right. I guess at this point they don't have any cards left in their hands, so I don't need to worry about the Sigarda dying as much. Destroy evil. That seems very good. So I kill that. Attack them with everybody. They block that. They take 9, 15. No, wait. They take 16. Somehow I have 6 creatures in play, but I don't have Coven. I guess I have too many copies of Brutal Cathar. I think I also did the math wrong. No, I didn't do the math wrong. It's like a tokens deck. They have to have wedding announcement, wedding anniversary type stuff in their deck. So I think I want my Lorans. Don't want AO against Red of Oblivion. I don't think I want Anointed Peacekeepers. The Brutal Cathars were surprisingly good that game. I think against tokens. I think I'm just going to take out some Wandering Emperors. Do I need Fateful Absence? I think I would definitely want to keep Mondrak off the board. A lot of lands, but I do have a 1-mana play and a 3-mana play. I'm going to keep it and hope for good things. And good things have already started happening. I drew a 2-drop. Less excited about land number 6. This hand was definitely a borderline keep. I probably keep hands like this too often on the draw. I suppose if I wanted to, I could have exiled. I could have caused my Melira to be an exile. That's probably the right way to play, just because my deck doesn't have any reason to want cards in the graveyard, and maybe they have something that exiles things from my graveyard for some reason. Given that I've drawn 2 lands and only 1 spell, I do not think I'm going to win this game. They also have turn 3 Fable of the Mirror Breaker on the play, which remains probably the best possible start in Standard. Ooh, that's cool. I didn't realize that we're going to get 2 treasures. It's kind of a nice synergy. Right, they could have saved it, right? They could have done the Phyrexian mana thing. I wasn't thinking about that when I played it. My spell, I didn't really feel like I had much choice. Hope they're not about to start Reflection of Kiki-Jiki-ing a Sanctum Warden. I think I have to just go after the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki and hope that it works. I don't think I can afford to let them start reflectioning random things. Like, it'd be nice to just take out this Goblin Shaman token, but I don't think I can afford to do that. I think I need to be more ambitious in my play. This might be one of those games where the game just stalls out and I actually start flipping Brutal Cathar back and forth. They're down to only one card. I was going to say I'm definitely going to pass this turn, but maybe given that I drew Sigarda, I'm not. If they have the Wandering Emperor in their hand, I think they would have attacked with their Goblin token if they do. So I think that I don't need to play around that. Come on, draw something bad. Takanuma. It's not that scary. Guess I can get their Mondrak back. And even that's really not that scary. They still just have a one-turn window to answer Sigarda. I think there's no reason that I would want to attack on the ground, so I'm not going to Brutal Cathar first. I'm going to see what I hit off of Sigarda. Do I want a Recruitment Officer number 2, or do I want Katilda? I think I want Katilda. I don't think I need the second Recruitment Officer because I think that they're obviously going to point whatever removal spell they draw at the Sigarda, so the Recruitment Officer is going to live at least another turn. Guess I'm going to get Mondrak off the board. Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to get Mondrak off the board because it's flipping back today. And because of the Katilda ability, I can still use the Recruitment Officer. That's not ideal. I think I'm still in very good shape, though. Should I just pass? Could also Recruitment Officer. Let's see if I find something good. I think I'm going to do that anyway, so let's just see what it is. Maybe it makes my decision easier. I'm definitely going to pass now. It's another Mondrak, so I guess I can copy a Crawling Chorus and get 2 tokens on the way out. That's kind of cool. I want to grow my things or draw more cards? I think I want to draw more cards. There we go. You're the one I was looking for. I think I'm going to get rid of Reflection of Kiki Jiki over Wedding Festivity. And I'm also going to get rid of Mondrak. And I'm going to pass the turn now because these are going to flip. So I'll have enough mana to end of turn activate Katilda. And then because of the Katilda, I'll have counters to immediately feed to the Hopeful Initiate. I think I should have been careful with how I targeted these. I think obviously I want both copies of Mondrak under the same Brutal Cathar, which it was just completely blind luck that that's how that worked out, because I certainly didn't put any time into thinking about how to do it. All right, now I'll play this guy. And I can get rid of the Wedding Festivity with counters off of my other creatures. So that's the deck. As you saw, it plays out pretty well. It can do some really powerful things. It's got a pretty good ability to grind while still being pretty aggressive. I would say it's not the most aggressive deck you can build in Standard, but I think it's probably in a good medium place. I felt like all the cards in the main deck performed pretty well. The sideboard maintains it's still a bit of a work in progress. We didn't really see any matchups where I felt like I wanted even Anointed Peacekeeper. I think that's the easiest card to cut right now. And I think that I would probably cut it for another cheap removal spell going forward if you want to try the deck out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.